most people convert automatics to manual. But today we're actually going to be taking a manual transmission car and turning it into an automatic. That's what we're going to be doing to this E39 wagon behind me. But there's a good reason why. If you guys remember, a couple months back we uploaded a video on this exact wagon. This car came all the way from Phoenix, Arizona, where another shop slash auto tech individual did a manual conversion on here among a lot of other things. And it was done improperly. There's a lot of issues with the car. But the main thing that's putting us off on this whole car is that it's a salvage title and it's got frame damage. And the frame repair was kind of done. I wouldn't even call it a repair. Somebody just hammered it together. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using this as a parts car. And we want to have it running. So we're going to take off all this manual components and we're going to put all the automatic stuff back on from the actual car that we're building. So this is a completely stock grandmother spec E39 wagon. By that I mean, if you look at the colors, it's beige on beige, automatic, but the one thing it's got going for it is it's a 540i. We have a whole video that went over this whole car as well when we got it. This belongs to the same owner as that silver E39. So we already harvested the automatic transmission out of here. But we still have some stuff that we need to take off. But first, I really want to focus on figuring out how we're going to get this manual transmission off. And fingers crossed, the people that installed it and did the conversion didn't mess anything else up. So our first obstacle is this whole exhaust system. So the headers are welded directly to the rest of the exhaust. It's a full custom one-piece solution, super lightweight. But the problem is the headers themselves have fitment issues. So they're hitting the transmission in certain spots, and my blades are almost shot. It's pretty late at night. So I don't want to cut all 4 pipes, but if I just cut one section right here where it merges, that's also going to be a problem because that's too far back. I still won't be able to have enough access for the transmission. But what I'm worried about is even if I cut it further up, since the headers are hitting the transmission, I'm still not going to have enough access. Yeah, we're kind of stuck on exactly what to do. I think I'm just going to go for it. We'll smoke this blade the rest of the way out. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so my blades are toast. I think we're just going to proceed with taking off the drive shaft from back here and try to get this transmission off without removing the exhaust. Oh man. They used the wrong nuts on the slave cylinder bolts. Hopefully they didn't strip any of this. We're about to find out. What? Should be 13s, but they're 12s apparently. Damn. One thing's for sure, whoever did the work, they definitely were stronger than I am. Because these bolts, they're not torqued. I don't know what they are, they're just tight, super tight. So, another issue that we just spotted, the guibo is installed the wrong way. You can see the arrow is pointing this way, so that means that this section right here, this hole, should be on the drive shaft. But instead, it's going to the output shaft on the transmission. So, for you guys that are ever going to be doing a drive shaft guibo, whenever the arrow is pointing, that should be pointing towards that flange or whatever.
Just as expected, the exhaust was definitely in the way of removing the drive shaft. To even get the drive shaft to come out, I had to cut off the hangers of the exhaust. But the hangers were all welded, they were not removable. So that made it even more difficult. But we ended up getting it in the end.
So they went through all this extra, they powder coated the drive shaft, they didn't replace the center support bearing. And look at this, let me show you guys something else. Right here, that exhaust hanger, they had to use a bolt because I guess they ran out of the hanger. So they used a bolt to the exhaust and they double hangered, and the hanger is directly welded to the frame of the car, the unibody. Not even the subframe, because the subframe is mostly aluminum. With the amount of work they did to cut all these corners, they could have just done it properly, honestly.
Lucky for us, the transmission itself, pulling it out, was actually not that bad. We were able to get all the bell housing bolts out very easily because they were all loose. And in order to get the transmission out from this small opening between the exhaust, we just messed with the angle a little bit, kind of turned it a little bit to the side, and that gave us enough clearance to pull it out completely.
So this manual conversion has literally maybe 1 mile on it, okay? Shouldn't be doing that. And I think we're not gonna be able to put the automatic transmission back on here until we cut this off, because there's no way that we're gonna be able to do it with the heavier automatic to put it back up here. All right, so I'm about to remove this whole pressure plate, get the clutch and all that out. If I recall correctly, the owner of the car said that he purchased a single mass flywheel for this conversion that was done into the silver car. But as I'm looking at this seems like a dual mass flywheel. As you can see, the ring gear is not moving. This secondary mass is. And it's got this sticker on here for, I guess, the part number. The clutch, I do know it's a loop clutch. It's marked right here, the pressure plate at least. It does look like a brand new clutch, so at least that's good. I did hear some kind of noise in here. That could have just been that spring, that's okay. These marks, I'm not really too worried. These are just the clutch burning in originally, since this is a brand new clutch. It really hasn't even been broken in yet. Damn, this is heavy. So this is a Luke flywheel. You can see it's been sitting for a little bit. That's why it's got this rust right here. We'll clean that up before we put it onto the beige wagon. So this wagon is officially back to being an automatic. We made a pretty big mess here, but here is all the manual components that came out. We've got the transmission, clutch, dual mass flywheel, cross member, the Rogue short shifter. So we're ready to pull this silver car out. This silver E39 540 is going to be for sale as a parts car. I did end up cutting off both of the exhaust from the headers. That way it just doesn't drag on the ground and all of that. But yeah, so, and don't mind that airplane noise in the back. The air compressor sounds like it's about to take off. We're able to pull it out just fine. The brakes don't seem to be working, but there's one thing that I forgot to take out of there for the manual conversion, and that is the clutch pedal. But one thing I noticed also is they never replaced the brake pedal. They kept the automatic brake pedal, which is wider. Let me show you guys. So you can see how the clutch pedal is practically touching the brake pedal, and that's because that brake pedal is supposed to be smaller, so not as wide, and it's supposed to be angled a little bit more that way. Today we have this E39 540i wagon behind me. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff on it. A lot of stuff has already been done. Here's a montage of everything that's already been done on here. This is the car that is actually going to be the final product. But before we can start modding it, always got to catch up on the maintenance.
This 540i has the M62 TU engine, which is very well known for its timing chain issues. This specific engine has 180,000 miles, so it needs a lot of maintenance. I mean, it needs all the gaskets, it needs all the hoses, vacuum lines, all the timing chain components, tensioners, pulleys, you name it, it needs it all. But it's also a good time to replace and rebuild certain components and upgrade them. For example, the Vanos system. So the Vanos, like most BMW Vanos, it wears out over time. It needs seals, it has other issues as well. So we're going to be rebuilding all of that stuff on this engine. In order to get access to all of these internal components, you have to remove everything from the outside. So that includes removing all the stuff off the top of the engine as well as all the stuff from the front of the engine. We're talking about valve covers, intake manifold, the water pump, alternator, and even all of the upper and lower timing covers. Now when you start removing these timing covers, all of the accessories have to come off. And since we're also going to be doing a manual conversion on this car, there's a couple of differences between the automatic and manual in terms of the cooling system. For example, the transmission cooler and the hoses that are attached to it. So all that stuff is going to get replaced or upgraded to what it needs to be for the manual. The upper timing covers were pretty straightforward to remove and pretty easy as well. But the lower timing cover is a whole different story, mainly because you have to remove the crank pulley bolt. And that crank pulley bolt, you have to get a crank pulley holder, and you might even have to use an air impact to remove it. But once it's off, then it's pretty much smooth sailing from there. Now here you can see all the components that we removed from the timing stuff. So we've got all the timing chains, the cam chains, the main timing chain, all the timing chain guides, as well as the tensioners, and even the whole oil separator system. With all that stuff removed, now we can get on to start rebuilding and replacing everything. And for that, we're starting with the Vanos units. When it comes to the Vanos, I always go with Bison Systems, mainly because they have all the stuff figured out. They make very good quality components, and they even have tools that you might need to do specialty things. For example, the M62 Vanos units. You have to have a special tool to be able to press some of these seals in at the very end, which you'll see what I'm doing with the vise. But we did buy all the seals and all the repair kits from Bison Systems and went ahead and replaced and rebuilt everything on these Vanos units. And another good thing about Bison Systems is they have complete write-ups for all their procedures. So it shows you exactly what you need to do, how to install all of the stuff that they're selling you, and their procedures are very well written with all of the specifications that you need. I'll have all of that stuff linked in the description down below.
So it's been a crazy few days. I haven't really been able to talk much. As you can see, one side of my face is still swollen. We had some issues with some wisdom teeth complications. So I haven't really been talking much. I've still been working, and this is where we're at right now. So I've got all the timing stuff done. Everything is torqued down. We got all the Vanos stuff taken care of. I even pulled off the valley pan. Still gotta clean up some of these areas before we replace the valley pan gasket and all of that. We're actually gonna be putting an upgraded whole valley pan in there. And then, just gotta clean up some more things like the covers that are going on here, clean up all the mating surfaces, put new gaskets, and then we're gonna put everything back together. So I've just been working away, getting everything replaced. I replaced all the gaskets, valley pan gasket, the gaskets inside the water pump, gaskets inside the coolant crossover pipe, as well as the gaskets that go to the heads on the coolant crossover pipes. I still need to put the intake manifold back on. I did replace the whole oil separator system on there, new gaskets, all of that. Just gonna clean inside the ports a little bit, and then we'll do that. Then we're going to take out the fuel pump fuse, prime the whole engine with oil. So I've got a new oil pan gasket. All that stuff's already been put back together. We've got all new power steering lines. So I replaced all of the power steering lines. There's a total of 4 of them. So we got all the pressure lines, everything, even a new power steering reservoir because the filter's built into it. So all that stuff is good to go. Yeah, so we're getting very close to finally starting it. But like I said, I'm gonna have to prime the whole oiling system without any fuel going through. So that's where we're gonna pull the fuel pump fuse. We're not even going to put any ignition coils or none of that, and just prime the whole system, get all of the oil flowing everywhere, and then we should be able to finally start it up. Alright, so we're all put back together. This is not the final product. There's still a lot of things that we are probably going to end up changing on here, but I needed to put everything back together with everything that we had. That way I can make sure, you know, everything else is proper, like the timing is good and all that, which I'm pretty sure it is. I mean, I double checked, triple checked actually. Some of the stuff is actually gonna get deleted because there is a tune on this DME that we need to figure out exactly what is, you know, still active and what isn't. Once I know all of that, then we'll go about deleting a lot of this stuff, cleaning up all of this as well. Everything is primed and ready to go for the first start. Hopefully everything works as it should. Let's do it. Yeah, there's no exhaust on here, so just open headers. That's why it's so loud. So all the stuff that we're doing on this car, we've pretty much had 2 wagons this whole time, a silver one and this beige one. And we've been combining the 2 to get the best parts out of all of them. And the beige one is gonna be the final product. So what we have to do now is put the 6-speed manual transmission in here. So this car was originally an automatic, so we're gonna be doing that whole manual conversion. And we're also gonna be doing a couple of other upgrades and aftermarket stuff that's still coming in the mail. For the time being, let's go ahead and put this manual transmission in here so we can get the ball rolling. All right, so I already got the foam replaced inside the selector rod. The only reason we went that route instead of buying a whole new selector rod, so the new rod is I think like around $70. That foam piece is around between $5 to $10. You can see it's nice and tight now, as it should be. We already got that shift rod seal replaced as well. I need to replace the clutch pivot pin inside of the bell housing and just look over everything else. And another thing that I did notice So there is no reverse switch on this transmission. There's no reverse light switch anywhere. I'm pretty sure it's this one right here. I need to check the diagram one more time, but I don't see any other place where it could be, and there's just no connector on here. So I'm pretty sure this one just broke off, so we're gonna have to buy that as well. But that can be done once the transmission's up in the car anyway, so that's not that big of a deal. Everything else seems fine. The fluid and stuff is still in here. I never drained it. I'll do that once it's back up there. We'll put new fluids in it. It should be new already, but we'll go ahead and replace it just in case.
Before we could put the manual transmission back on, it was a good time to replace this coolant block cover gasket, as well as the rear main seal and the rear main plates gasket as well. Once all that was done, I reset the pressure plate using a 3-jaw puller, and then got the clutch and everything installed, and now we're ready to put the transmission back on. So here's all the wiring for the 540 manual conversion. So as you can see, we have the transmission computer, the EGS, completely unplugged. The process is almost exactly the same as the 6-cylinder 5 Series E39, which I have a whole video on that with the wiring and coding instructions. I'll have all that stuff in the description down below as well. There's only one key difference, and that's on the X6004 connector, which is the 40-pin connector right here on the DME. So what you have to do is you have to wire pin 6 and pin 40 together. And this is because the 540 automatics, they actually came with what's called auto start. And what that means is when you turn the car on the automatics, you just turn the key to crank it once. You don't have to hold it. You just crank it and you let go, and it automatically keeps cranking until the car turns on. So we had to disable that because now with the manual conversion, we don't want that. So that's why we wire the pin 6 and pin 40 together. There's also a couple of changes inside the car. So the inside of the car is still a little bit of a mess. We're still gonna clean all this stuff up. We're still waiting on the brake pedal because the brake pedal is different from auto to manual. But we got everything else installed. We got the clutch pedal, new clutch master, all the wiring done. Now the only difference in here in the 540 when you're doing the manual conversion is with the EWS. So the EWS already has a connector at pin 8. So when you're doing the manual conversion, you wanna run a wire from the clutch switch to the EWS at pin 8, but because of that auto start function on the 540s, there's already something there at pin 8. So what you actually want to do is you want to take the wire that's at pin 8 currently, you take that wire out and you ground it. So once that wire is grounded, that's going to effectively disable that whole auto start function, since we also have the pin 6 and pin 40 on the X6004 connector at the DME put together. So that gets rid of the whole auto start function, and once you do all the coding, all this stuff will be proper. Besides that, for the reverse switch, it's the same as the 6-cylinder E39s. We do have to run a wire to the cluster from the reverse switch, and I have all that instructions on the other video, and I'll also have all that stuff in the description of this video. Now when it comes to coding, it is a little bit tricky because we never got a 540 manual wagon in the States. We only got 540 wagon autos. Now if you just have a normal 540 sedan, it's still very straightforward. You just have to use the ZCS from the 540 sedan manual that came in the US. But for wagons, it's a little bit different because wagon has the hatch in the back, and it's got a little different wiring, different coding for all that as well. So if you just change the ZCS by using the manual from Europe, so the manual wagon Europe ZCS, which I believe is 5B51, that's like the little code. If you just use that, then all the stuff is going to be in German, and it's also going to be in kilometers and all that. So you have to go through all of the modules that have anything that, like the instrument cluster, the GM module. You have to go through all that stuff and recode it so that way it's back to US. The other way to do it is you only code the specific modules that you need to. All that information will be in the description down below, so make sure you read that before you go on and do any type of coding on the 540. It is a little bit tricky. I'll also have a link down below. I believe there's a couple of threads on the forums where people have different alternatives of different type of coding you can do. The way I did it, I just went through each module and coded it individually. I did not change the whole car's ZCS because if I do that, then we have to go through and change a lot of the other modules back. and it's just a little bit more difficult that way. The easiest way is you just go through each module, like the EWS, the instrument cluster, the DSC module. You go through those and change those individually. So make sure you read the description for any of that stuff. For the wiring and coding instructions, it'll all be down there. So most of the E39 540 wagons actually came with self-leveling suspension in the rear. What that means is it had air suspension in the back and normal strut and spring suspension in the front. So what we're gonna end up doing, we got a set of KW V1 coilovers, which comes with a normal coilover for the front and just the rear shock. And then we can actually adjust the height just through the computer. So we can just code in the height that we want and just lower it like that. You can also get like custom links that adjust the height. They're adjustable links, and that's another way to do it. So what we're gonna try to do first is we're gonna try to adjust through the computer first, see what's the lowest we can get and make sure that levels out with the front. We're not trying to go for a slam look here, just something a little bit better. This car has 180,000 miles, so all of that suspension is stock and blown. So these coilovers are gonna be a great upgrade for it as well. So just gonna get all these installed. It's pretty straightforward, but I will have some stuff linked down below because when you are putting these coilovers in, you do have to get a separate strut mount, not the one that's made for the 540, but rather for the normal 530 and the associated washers. So I'll have all that stuff linked down below along with all the other stuff that we've done on here. It's gonna be a pretty long description, but hey, if you guys need to do any of this work on your car, at least now you'll know. All right, so we've got all the coilovers installed. And as I said before, the rear actually has the self-leveling air suspension. So what we just ended up doing is just replacing the actual shocks. So we got all new hardware, new shock mounts and all of that. That's installed on both sides. There are a few other things that we are going to end up doing, but for now I think we're going to take the car off the lift. And those few things are going to be replacing the rest of this front suspension. So we're replacing all the control arms, the tie rod ends as well, and sway bar links. So we actually had all the control arms and all that stuff come with the silver car. They were still new in box, and I thought they were made for the 540, but when I was about to start putting them on, I realized that they are not. They're actually made for the 530. And the 530 control arms are completely different, and we're also gonna buy new stainless steel brake lines at the same time because owner wants to upgrade those as well. So for now, we've got the coilovers installed, we've got the ride height pretty much even on both sides. We're gonna adjust the rear ride height through the computer, which is awesome. There's a couple other things also, the engine mounts, transmission mounts. I'll get all that stuff replaced, get those suspension components replaced, then get the car sent to the exhaust shop to get that custom made. But besides that, that's it for this video. I mean, we pretty much got everything we need to done on this car. We'll definitely update you guys once we get the rest of the stuff. I do want to give it a quick clean once it gets back from the exhaust shop as well. Want to make sure when the owner sees the car for the first time, it actually looks decent and not like it's been sitting for, what, 2-3 years, however long it's been sitting. And we'll clean up the inside and all that as well. So I will see you guys in the next video where we get it ready to get delivered to the customer.